We're already choreographed, just like ice dancing.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Northshire Presents virtual event. My name is David Wood. I'm the events manager at Northshire's Manchester, Vermont location. I want to let you know that at any point this evening, you are welcome to type your questions into the Q&A box or into the chat box, and then I'll save them up for you and ask them at the end when we get to the Q&A. And finally, before I introduce our authors tonight, a note of thanks. Independent bookselling is a challenging business in the best of years. And the last 2 years haven't been that. So Northshire owes its continued existence to your support, and we are enormously grateful. Anyway, tonight it is my great pleasure to welcome to Northshire Rob Osler for his debut novel, Devil's Chew Toy. Here's the link if you haven't ordered it yet with your ticket. This is the first book in the new Hayden and Friends Contemporary Mystery Series. Rob won the 2022 Robert L. Fish Memorial Award for Best Short Story by a Debut Author as part of the annual Edgar Awards, which you know are huge. Rob also coined the term quozy mystery to describe Devil's Chew Toy. It says it's literally the love child of LGBTQ plus fiction and the cozy mystery. Earlier reviewers have said this nail biter of a book is gut-bustingly funny, endlessly entertaining, and a little bit scary. This is one of those books that makes you wonder if the world isn't just a bit more edgy, fun, dangerous, eccentric, and exciting than you thought. We are lucky to be joined tonight also by longtime friend of the Northshire, Sara J. Henry. She is the author of Learning to Swim, an Anthony Agatha and Mary Higgins Clark Award winner, and A Cold and Lonely Place, both of which are Northshire staff favorites. She's also the editor of Rob's book, Devil's Chew Toy. Please join me in welcoming to Northshire, Sara J. Henry and Rob Osler. Why don't y'all take it away?
This is where we normally pause for applause, right? But nobody's here. I have to tell you, it's pandemic. I don't often go out, and I'm getting ready for this event. And I literally, Rob, I have to confess, I have a set of Harry Potter robes in my closet, and I almost wear my Harry Potter robes. And Northshire did used to have a very amazing Potter event. I have to just take a moment selfishly just to say, even though I'm not actually there, I'm so happy to be back in Northshire because it is one of my very favorite places, let alone favorite bookstores, and so many people there I love, and so many wonderful authors I've seen there. So Rob, I wish you could be there for real, and maybe someday soon you can be. So I'm going to show you my copy of Devil's Chew Toy, which you probably can't quite see, but Rob already knows this, but I have a new puppy, and the puppy saw this yesterday and took a giant chomp. Must have seen the chew toy and said, oh, that's what it is. So I'm going to kick off by asking you a different question, as I want you to tell us about Commander.
Commander.
Yes.
Well, a couple things. First off, who doesn't love a cute dog or a cute cat? Or, everybody either grew up with animals or, has animals still in their lives. So having an animal in the story was just something I wanted to do because I'm an animal lover. We have a tall gray cat right now. I've had dogs in the past, really grew up with dogs. So I knew that I wanted a dog in the story. But not only does Commander serve a role in, showing a softer side of Hayden, although most of Hayden's sides are pretty soft, I have to say. He needs to get hardened up, and Hollister's the one to do it, but more on that later. But one of the key things that Commander does is he provides a key plot point that drags Hayden into the story. Otherwise, one thing people might criticize of certain mysteries is, yeah, but why is the hero hanging out? Why do they feel compelled to hang in there and go through this torment or this pain and solving this crime? Well, for Hayden, he gets dragged into this crazy situation, and there's a dog in the situation, and so he's got a choice. Either, well, I can either send him to the pound or just leave him alone, or I can do what I'm compelled to do, which is take this dog in, even though I live in an apartment and there's no pets policy. And, and then just fun mayhem can, take off from that place with the dog. So it draws him in, but then it also gives him a bit of a foil, and, his neighbor hates the dog. And so then there's drama there. And So yeah, it was about creating an interesting character in a dog, letting Hayden have somebody to play off of in that way, and a key plot point. And let's not forget Jerry,
Mhm.
who I think is one of your favorite characters,
Yes.
91-year-old neighbor of Hayden, who's the main protagonist, 91-year-old neighbor, next door neighbor of Hayden's evangelical aunt. And he loves the dog. So there's some fun, what I hope are fun and like charming moments between 91-year-old Jerry and the dog, who become even better friends than Hayden and the dog.
Yes, no, I do. I think I remember there's specific scenes I remember that drew me to it. And one is the relationship with Jerry and the dog, and even just how Hayden goes. He doesn't even hesitate. He goes and does errands for Jerry, this older guy that, although I think you mentioned the other day that you probably shouldn't have made him 91 because we want this series to go on for a while. He's going to be 101, before you know it. It can happen, he's an
Yeah.
octogenarian. Which of your characters came first to you? Who appeared first? Was it always Hayden?
It was Hayden. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but there's a Martin Scorsese film, like 1985, maybe. So it's going back ways, called After Hours. Did you ever see that movie?
I don't think so. Yeah.
It's a great movie. It's a hoot. It all happens like in one evening. Griffith Dunn is the character. Terry Garr. I love Terry Garr. She's in that movie. A number of other, famous actors. But it all happens in one evening, where it starts with this kind of innocent errand that he goes to run. And just one thing leads to another, and silliness and mayhem ensue over this course of a night in Manhattan. And so I started with Hayden, and I played around, for many years with this plot of, within a 24-hour period, how much craziness could I jam into his life to kind of bring him out of his shell. So that's a long way around to say it was always Hayden. Clearly now the story takes place over about 3 weeks period of time, 2 to 3 weeks. But it started out as like this crammed in like 24-hour craziness, which was kicked off by just kind of one crazy improbable event, and then it just goes from there.
I will say, and I do have to point out, I didn't just edit this, but I was like the first reader of it, over basically the Christmas holidays. It was when it came in, and I just immediately, like, it doesn't let up. It's not fast paced in that breathless kind of way, but it just there's not a dull moment. There's not a, you should tighten here or this leg's here. It's just a really good story. This might be a good place, Rob, if you have that handy, that little introduction to Hayden, that you read a little bit.
Yeah, this is off the first page, really just the second paragraph, but it gives a good little kind of intro into Hayden. Something's just happened. Despite the damage done to my face, the worst of the experience had been me being the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. Embarrassing for most, excruciating for yours truly. Everyone who knew me said I was quiet and reserved, perhaps to a fault. My latest ex had joked that my tolerance for thrill-seeking maxed out on the teacups ride at Disneyland. I'd brushed off the comment with a laugh, but in truth, the remark had stung. Being 5'4", rounding up, and weighing 125, again rounding up, makes one sensitive to such jabs. Add to that the fact I'm freckled and possess a shock of red-orange hair that same ex had pegged as being the color of a Cheetos bag, and you understand why I might take offense.
So that kind of, I hope that gives people, this is where I miss an audience because I want to see people's faces right now and I can't. Hopefully that gives them a picture of what Hayden is like. I know when we were trying to describe the book to people, I kind of came up with, it's because they were, some people were thinking it was too a hard, gritty, kind of serious mystery. And it's not exactly a cozy, cozy adjacent, cozy, but, and if the listeners know what a cozy is, those are often very light, sometimes themed, as in it's set in a chocolate shop or it's set in a with a sewing club, and nothing hardcore happens. You can let your granny read it. Okay.
Right.
And I would absolutely say that were either my granny's alive, I would hand them this book. So it is cozy adjacent in that way. But let's see, I had another question on the tip of my tongue. And so what I'll do instead is read one of my favorite blurbs. Oh, this is what I was going to say is, yeah, my description of it has been, I think Hardy Boys, but instead, a 25-year-old redheaded gay male elementary school teacher stumbling upon a missing person case, aided by two friends of the missing guy, and getting advice from the elderly neighbor he helps out. Managed to squeeze all the characters except the dog
That's
in the
right.
end.
Yeah.
And all the dog lovers will be offended. But it is just, like I said, this came in, not this Christmas, but Christmas before, and it just, I grabbed me from the start. I mean, I wanted to acquire this book as soon as I read it, and I've never regretted it. Do you want to possibly, what's the good way for to introduce the other two main characters? Maybe just describe how he goes, because he's basically, you were brilliant in the missing person that he's just met. So he could just say, well, okay, forget about this guy, but he's got the dog. So he
That's
can't
right.
forget him. And he needs to find the owner because he's got the dog. And that
That's
leads
right.
him on this quest of finding people who know Camillo, who is the fellow who's disappeared.
That's right.
And that's how he meets.
That's how he first meets Hollister.
Okay.
So he returns to the bar where the missing guy works, where he first met him, to basically find some friends or colleagues, or like, who is this guy? Because as you just say, it's like he barely knows this guy, but he's now, saddled with the dog, and it's like, what's going on? So I better go find some friends. And so he ends up getting a ride with Hollister to a kegger party where they meet Burley. So these are the two kind of other main characters that go on this adventure ride with Hayden as they solve the crime. Hollister, as I describe her physically, not in the book, but how I describe her now, at least the way she lives in my mind is, I'm a big tennis fan, tennis player still. She's like Serena Williams in stature, except she's also sporting a 6-inch mohawk. So she's a very, kind of large presence, very confident. As soon as I say confident, she's got girl troubles where she's actually very vulnerable, and that's a whole other side to her. But he meets Hollister, who's like, twice his size, 5 times his, level of courage and boldness. And so he goes on a crazy ride with her in her Porsche to Burley's house. Burley is literally a giant. She's 6'5", 300 pounds. She wears orange Crocs and denim cutoffs. She's also an MC at a karaoke night and an acclaimed baker. She's a total stoner. So these characters are a bit over the top. I try to almost write them as if there's like a ceiling, that they're bumping their head right against the ceiling of believability. And, for Hollister, she's like constantly brushing her mohawk against the ceiling of believability. Burley, probably just given her size, crashes through that ceiling as it is. But I like the juxtaposition of not only the mismatch of their kind of their boldness and their presence in life, where Hollister is, much like me, like very reserved and pretty mild-mannered. These two women that he's found himself kind of joined up with are the polar opposite of him. And I wanted those opposites to be so extreme that I made them not only personality opposites, but also quite physical opposites, because it is a book. And I wanted the reader to be able to envision these characters in their full, great exaggeratedness, which is probably more entertaining than even my imagination, I'm guessing, in terms of like writing them on the page.
You have great characters, and most books have a place where, if it were a TV show, you'd go get a snack from the kitchen, but yours really didn't. And I say that quite honestly, it just kept moving. I've talked before about some of my favorites. How about your favorite scenes? What do you have specifically favorite scenes?
I do. The first one that springs to mind is when, and this is a good segue just from introducing Hollister and Burley is when Hayden gets to the party with Hollister. It's a kind of a ramshackle ranch house, Burley's home. And there's a kegger party going on, and they find Burley in the backyard, and Burley's completely stoned. And the conversation with Burley and Hollister and Hayden is one of my favorite moments, because I just imagine being there and just like watching this interaction between the three of them. And I would find it just like, if not amusing, which hopefully readers will find that part of the book, that passage amusing, but it's certainly like interesting. It's like, wow, these are really strange people. Another one that comes to mind is, and this is somewhat autobiographical, which you can probe on that, is the scene with Burley's brother, Roy Driggs, at his trailer in his kind of menacing compound, where they go in, and I won't spoil this, but they go in and into the trailer, because again, they're looking for the missing guy, Camillo. And so Burley has said, oh, Camillo went to go see my brother, who's a very bad dude. And so they go in there, and it's dark and it's creepy, but there's a surprise when they enter Roy's trailer that is just a really strange scene. But it's a strange scene based on a room in my grandmother's house that looks like that. I was basically describing this room in her house, which is but then I put it in like this armed guy's, this survivalist weirdo's trailer.
I think my grandmother had that room too. Yeah, this was in Tennessee. I don't know where your grandmother was, but
Idaho.
Okay, well, there's
where I grew up.
Definitely similarities everywhere. Probably,
I was just going to say one thing that's really interesting that you brought up a couple of times is the pacing, right? And one thing that is just one of my favorite things that Katrina McPherson, who you introduced me to, and is such a delightful human.
Delightful writer, yes.
Oh,
yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah.
A pacey romp, and in trying to study the craft, because again, this is my debut novel. Writers will, in different conferences and webinars, will talk to you about pacing, and it can't just be like 100 miles an hour, every single page, every single chapter, you'll exhaust the reader. So I did try to create those kind of, not down moments, but, more quiet moments. But at the same time, it's funny, I haven't really thought about this. I really was, in my brain got stuck that Martin Scorsese movie, After Hours, where it's just like, oh my gosh, this thing is almost exhausting, because it's like such a thrill ride. It just keeps going, and it's like, what's going to happen next? So I really did, I tried to like never let my foot totally off the gas, but to vary the speed, so it's not all at Hollister speeds, which, if the speed limit's 60, Hollister's going 80. But never a crawl. I tried to keep it, as Katrina has said, like, a pacey romp.
Because I had to look up the word pacey, honestly, to figure out what that was. I think it was our other, one of other blurbs that I helped facilitate was from Gigi Pandy, and she also called it a romp. So that should sort of be our word for your book, a romp.
Yeah, awesome.
I have so many questions, and I've run some of them by you before, but I do like to be able to surprise you. How long was your path to getting this book published? Very long. How long do people have, right?
It was super long. Well, I'll throw out a name. I'd be delighted if she was out there in one of these boxes that we can't see of viewers, but
we're gonna pretend she is.
But Tanya Egan, who
I know her.
Right?
I know her.
Crazy
Yes,
World, you know her. I pitched this book to a number of agents in 2015 or 2016 at the San Francisco Writers Conference. I was lived for a long time in San Francisco and was there at this particular time. And she was at a table for editors, and you'd hand them a page, and if there's any aspiring writers out there, or even writers who are now published, in whatever way, who have gone through this experience of speed dating at conferences, where you actually, you pay your money and you get literally 3 minutes at this tiny table with an agent or an editor, and you pitch your book, and you hopefully, the best outcome is to get slipped a card, and you can say, and they'll say, okay, send me 10 pages, and you can put this conference in the title of the email, and I'll give it special attention. Well, I met Tanya way back at that point, and I thought, the book was done. Little did it's so ludicrous.
Books are never done.
But I thought it was done, and it was such a ramshackle wreck way back when. But she was very kind, and she took a look at it and helped. And just the other interesting thing about that is hopefully a somewhat interesting anecdote. In that pitch process, again, you have 3 minutes, and I was well rehearsed. I had my patter down, and within the first 20 seconds, I mentioned Go-Go Boy.
Yeah, you threw me with that, because I thought it was something naughty. I didn't know what it was.
Oh my gosh. And it just, I was doomed from that moment on, because the rest of my precious 3 minutes were spent educating the person on the other side of the table of like, no, they're not prostitutes. No, they really are go-go boys, not go-go girls.
I did look it up. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So it was really, it was interesting of how charged that term was, and how the definitions actually every single person brought to that, and at least in every single person in that venue brought to that term. So anyway, I learned a lot about like how to pitch that. But to your original question, like how long it's, when I've thought over the years that's it, that's the book. Now it's done. And then I would realize, oh, that character is too like thinly, drawn. So I better give them dimension. Oh, wait, that passage that's always really bothered me, it's bothered me because it doesn't really work. And I want it so badly to be done that I'm just going to pretend like it's okay.
Yeah.
And, it's, when is it done? I don't know. I mean, I felt like after 6 years, and mind you, it wasn't like 6 years every day,
Right.
tapping away.
I mean, you do have a job.
I do have a job.
Yes. So, yes, you have a life and a job. So you weren't, full time.
Right. And, you hope that over the years you get better. And there's other things that I've written that haven't got to this stage yet, right? Of being published and out in the world and on bookshelves. But it's a long slog of critiques and just being open to beta readers' comments and putting it away for not just a few days, but weeks or even months. And then looking at it and you're like, wow, why did I think that worked? And then you rework it. And you were saying when we spoke last, it's like, even you now, as accomplished as you are, you're reading stuff, of your own, your previous published novels, and going, oh, I'd probably change that.
So I change it as there's a passage. I read my first chapter quite often because it's quite short and it grabs people, and then they buy the book, because I'm all about selling my books. And there's several places one was, I think it's a sentence that should be into 2 sentences, and another place I just, so you always find little tweaks. But your book, I will say, was one of the cleanest that came my way. Of course, me being me, I found places. And again, I'm very happy you got rid of the Go-Go Boys, because it did make me think, and I think it would scare Granny off, because, while the actual definition of it is just a dancer, people don't know that. So I did learn very early on in my own drafts that if people get a wrong impression early on in a book, no matter how much evidence to the contrary you have later, they hang on to that wrong impression. So I just,
it was great, because we were on the same wavelength in that, the book is the book, and, it's a fairly narrow lane, but let's try to widen that lane as far as possible without it's losing its, its integrity and what makes it.
We didn't change the characters at all. We talked about it before once, the guy, let's not have the F word. Let's just not, because that's you lose a subset. You could do without it. and you lose a subset of readers if you have it. I mean, you don't want to scare readers off. I want as many readers, this book to have as many readers as it possibly can. I mean, it's just a good mystery. It's just wonderful characters, colorful, but not in a, way out there kind of way. Although you do have two, like you say, physically larger than life characters. It's good. It's really, really good. And I really don't, I know we didn't have any disagreements over it.
We really didn't. And,
Yeah.
it was important. It was important to me, and you got this right away, that, the characters are either the main characters. There's certainly, heterosexual straight people in the book, but the main three characters, Hollister, Burley, and of course Hayden, are gay or lesbian. But it would be a very fast edit to turn them all straight.
Oh, it
And the
never
book
occurred to
still-
me to even change
it's
one
still-
of them. Mm-mm.
It's still, but the story still works, the mystery still works.
It would.
So their being gay is not a crucial element to making the story work. It just happens to be a crucial element to me as the author, that I wanted gays and lesbians to be represented in a traditional mystery, just as themselves, as their multidimensional selves.
Right.
But it doesn't revolve around their sexual identity in any way. It's just kind of
They just
incidental.
happen to be gay.
Yeah.
They literally, and this is definitely PG rated. I mean, we might
Yep.
have one or two 4-letter words, but I would say it's PG.
It's
You're
pretty,
thinking-
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as you said, I think Jerry, the 91-year-old guy, he may have let loose with one, and we let him have it because, he's 91. And
We even that one, that's the one, it's like, oh, should we have given it? Because if anybody got it, it'd be, him to drop the F-bomb.
yeah,
But no, he doesn't do it.
yeah.
But you're right. I mean, we talked about this a lot. In the end, we just didn't need it. Didn't need it.
I've looked at some manuscripts lately that are just, it's all through it, and it doesn't even fit the tone of the book. It's like, I mean, there's some books, it would sound strange if the characters weren't cursing, but you got to be true to what you write. And I do, honestly, I have to give kudos to the publisher here, Crooked Lane Books, because Grant, I pushed hard for this book. They didn't have a shelf for this. You know what I mean? We didn't have a genre for it. We have cozies, but gee, can we put this with the cozies? Because what if someone picks it up and reads it thinking it's a cozy? Well, what if they do, is my stance. So marketing is always tricky, and I do have to give them a great deal of appreciation that they did this. And my pitch was kind of onefold, like, you got to start somewhere. There's others out there. These are great books, and yeah, it can happen. And I think you might have said in your query letter, I tell me if I'm wrong, something like it was a type of book you would have liked to read. You want to see characters in a book that, could resemble you or could be you. And I think that's true. But
yeah,
I think a lot of people can see themselves in Hayden. They don't have to be gay to see themselves in Hayden.
Yep.
There's a lot of us that are kind of on the outside. I mean, I had a friend, she lives in Costa Rica now, and in high school and college, like, I was the follower. She was the one like, let's go backpacking. Okay. And then we'd get to the Smokies and I'd say, where's the shelter? And she messed up and there was no shelter. We ended up finding two guys that let us squeeze into their tent, and then the night a bear came, and but I would just follow. I was a good follower. I grabbed opportunities, and I kind of did the same thing with my publishing journey. If somebody said, you need to go to that conference, I'm like, okay. And I went. And I made the most of it. But I'm not a natural, I'll go here, I'll go there. So, I can see myself in Hayden, that kind of, I'm not really this kind of person, but okay. I kind of have to do these things because I've got this dog, and this kind of nice guy went missing. And I mean, we haven't even talked at all on how much we can talk about the rest of the plot without giving it away. Other than I do like mentioning, the name of the pet shop, which is Barkingham Palace, which we kind of wanted to title the book. I actually realized I remembered one of our suggested titles was, I think, Looking for Commander's Dad. Something like that, remember? Which wouldn't have been bad either.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, finding titles is I'll admit my second novel, Cold and Lonely Place, I literally had a list. I have like 10 different drafts with 10 different titles. And I remember pitching it to one agent with an entirely different title because I thought it would appeal to him more. And then we changed it. Actually, the original one we changed back. So it's a fun process, but I hope it went fairly, not too bad. At least the editing
Yeah.
process was good. And
I-
we have a
The
good,
editing process was great. You're right. The positioning of the book and like,
that's tricky.
how does it
People
show
don't
up
know.
on the shelf?
Do we,
Really
yeah.
tough.
Yeah. I just want it to be with mysteries. It should be right in there with all the mysteries. And I mean, at Northshire, I have a mystery section. They don't have I don't believe they have a separate cozy section, so it should just be on the shelf there.
Yeah.
Like,
And you're of course right to give credit to Crooked Lane, and we had a number of iterations with not only the title, but also with the book cover. But I think we ended up in a really good place. I was in a Barnes and Noble, support your local bookstore, which is not necessarily Barnes and Noble, I have to say. So
but
Northshire.
it could be your only, yeah.
It could be. I mean, I'm actually talking to you from Palm Springs, California, and that is like the local bookstore, which is, if anybody out there wants to be entrepreneurial, come to the Coachella Valley and open a great bookstore because there's no close bookstore. But it's fun to see it on the shelf because it really, as they say in package design, it does really pop on the shelf.
Oh, good. The colors are good. That's the thing that
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
very
know. I
distinctive.
mean, I know if a cover gives the wrong suggestion, and that's where I'll raise my hand about covers. Like, yeah, this is going to make people think something's a gritty book when it's not, or vice versa.
Right.
But yeah, I will say, I just realized one of the big thrills for me as an author is when my book hit paperback and wandering into a Target. And that actually had to be in New Hampshire because I don't think there are any Targets in Vermont, and seeing my book on a shelf as a Target pick. And I think it was next to who became good friends with my friend Taylor Stevens' book, and another author that I knew. And it was just that feeling of, wow, that's my book. Yeah, it's a fun kind of thing. It's a long road, and I do think some people give up too soon. And I know some people give up on certain books too soon. I mean, my first novel was my first novel. It was certainly not the first iteration of my novel. But my reasoning is, if you're building houses, you don't build one and say, well, that's crap, I'll just build another one. You got to fix the first one to learn how to do it. And there was a point where it was do or die with my first novel, which became Learning to Swim. And I actually, this is a roundabout way of arranging an amazing way to make yourself learn to revise, is that I broke my foot 3 weeks and had a surgery and a cast 3 weeks before I left for Australia for a 5-week house swap. So I'm in, and it started, I got there at the first of their winter, which is normally pretty mild and very dry, but it started to rain. So I'm in, I'm on crutches and crippled and don't know anybody. And there's a 14-hour time difference, so you can't call anybody. And I don't even know, so maybe I had internet, but that's where I learned to rewrite. But that was my last ditch. Like, I have to really learn to rewrite and re-envision the middle of my book, which was originally awful, and make it work, or I'm going to give up. And I had amazing good luck. There's an author that I had run into at the BoucherCon, someone told me to go to, called Michael Robotham. He lives in Australia. He had best-selling novels. And I had emailed, and this is how introverts force themselves to meet people, is they email them first. Because that's easy to do, right? It's like, that's how, if I'd had to pitch my book in public, I would have never sold it. A pitch session, I would have sat there going, well, I have a book. So, but I could do things on paper. And so he agreed to meet with me. And I ended up taking crutches to the train station, taking a train, and then taking a ferry, meeting him across the water there in Sydney. And he started asking me questions about my book that I was working on revising. He was the first person who acted as if it was going to get published. And it shifted a cog in my brain. Like, if this guy, and he actually convinced me to change the title. At the time, every title was going to be a play on the words Troy Chance, the last name, which I thought was clever, and you could recognize it across the room. Kind of like, I was a big fan of Travis McGee, and each one of those had a color in the series. But he said, if you have a pun in your title, you will never win an award. I mean, you might, I do think there's cozy awards you might win, but so anyway, he made me change my title. But he said it sounded like the Bobbsey twins too, and that ruined it for me.
Because yeah, I remember you, I don't think we've talked about this, but somewhere I read something about changing the title,
Mhm.
because having read the book, then I'm like, that's a great title for that book.
Yeah, I did
Somebody's
not
gonna
come
ask
up
you
with
like,
it.
how
A
did
friend of mine
you,
did. I
where
did,
did
a
that
friend of
come
mine
from?
did, and I'm like, and I used to work for Rodale Books, so I'm like, aren't they people gonna take it literally and think it means learning to swim? But I will say also, a lot of people don't know what their book is about. And I thought my book was an adventure, rescue a child and da 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 da. But what the book was about was letting your heart open to love a child. And the irony is,
Mm,
of course, then how many years later I got a 7-year-old child, like the heroine in the book. Um, but learning to live in the world like Hayden did, in a way, Hayden learned to swim. Swim
yeah,
worked for my title because there's a lot of scenes involving the water. But
right.
no, I did not come up with that. I never would have. I had a long list of some that, weren't bad, but I wouldn't have done that. I've also have heard that books with a gerund in the title, which for the non-grammar freaks, that's an ing word, do
Mm.
quite well. Verbs and gerunds, but, there's a limit to, you run out after a while. So
That should be like a conference breakout session right there, like titling
titles.
your book. That'd be
It's
very interesting.
it's kind of a running joke with my kid and me now, is that we come up with, that would be a great title. And I wish I had saved them all in one place, because we come up with all I always say, I'm going to write the next book to the title. And we come up with these
Mm,
great sounding titles, and I have scraps of paper everywhere and notes, and I should have kept, the minute
mhm,
we started doing that, I should have had a notebook and wrote them all down, because you,
mhm.
oh, great title.
Well,
But
I
those
can
are
tell
hard.
you, coming up with titling the second Hayden book, hopefully
Oh,
all
yeah.
you people like, you can make the second Hayden book happen by
Yes.
buying
Oh,
this
right.
one
That's it.
from
Yeah. You
Northshire
have to
Books.
buy this book or there won't be a second book. So yes, buy
But
any of them.
but by coming up with a title that matches, that is of the right pitch,
Yeah, it would
is
have been
is
easier with Buckingham Palace, but
really, it totally would be so much easier, right? Because
no,
like you pick the
no, but
place,
we
like and
ended
like
up, we had
easy
you,
peasy.
I'd gotten you to come around to Buckingham Palace about the time the publisher decided, went full circle and said, no, we like Devil's Chew Toy.
Yeah.
But Devil's Chew Toy, if you follow the theme, and I will very briefly say, Devil's Chew Toy it's an expression that Rob made up, but it sounds so convincing. It sounds like an old expression from the South. But you'd almost have to do the same for the next one, a weird
Yeah.
expression. But I
Yeah.
will tell you, some people think, oh, this
Tricky.
is a book about a dog. So thank goodness you have a dog in it,
Right.
because then you would really be in trouble.
Right. And animals kind of,
Yeah, it
figure
does have
in, but
animals.
it's really about the dog.
Yeah, yeah.
So it makes sense.
You
Yeah.
could always write a children's version from the viewpoint of the dog.
Oh.
Sort of the art of racing in the rain, kind of thing. And I know he had
Hmm.
trouble selling that. A ton of people said you can't develop a book from the, viewpoint of a dog. And it actually works quite well. The adult version. I think he did do a children's version of that too, but
Hmm.
yeah. So you haven't come up with the title then. You're gonna wait till.
Oh, just like you were describing for your previous work, I've got a long list. I think of them like, truly like it,
Yeah.
without a lie. This morning at like 3 a.m. it's like, oh, what about that? And I don't jump out of bed. I'm not that.
Yeah.
I'm not that wound up about it. But as soon as I get up and I get to the computer,
Yeah.
then I add it to the list. So I've got a long list going.
You want
I think
short, you want something people remember, something they can pronounce easily,
Yeah.
something,
And funny, titles are so interesting because I'm just committed for whatever reason. It's like I want, if you search for it, that the first that there's not another one.
Well,
And
that's
I'm
true.
I'm trying to avoid, death and murder and which is very prevalent in mystery titles.
Yes, it is. I will tell you, the Learning to Swim, when we had that one, and there hadn't been a Learning to Swim for a long time. And then the same year, another Learning to Swim came out. The same time as mine, because of course, copyright book titles. And the irony is, one of my first book clubs, and it was a Zoom, and I'm so happy that, how on earth did this group hear about me? And I asked them, and they were all kind of embarrassed. And they said, well, actually, they meant to get the other Learning to Swim because it was on sale on Kindle for 99 cents or something. And then they all accidentally bought mine. but I think they liked it. The one thing I'm really sorry for you for right now is that you don't get to go to book clubs because of the pandemic. And I got to tell you, book clubs are so much fun. I mean, it's like basically almost all women. I don't think I've been to a single one, but just, they feed you, they give you wine, you get to talk about your book, and a bunch of them buy your book. And it's just like you make a group of friends. So I had a yacht club once that asked me, and it was near my hometown, which I think was the connection. And I took my kid along, and they, spoiled him. And he just thinks it's a glamorous life because I took him with all my events.
Did you wear your white yachting outfit?
Oh no, I didn't happen to have one. Although that made me think that my gym, I came from the generation where you had in PE, in elementary school, you had gym or PE once a week, and you had to have an outfit. And my outfit was a little sailor top. So I always wore that on Thursdays because that was my PE outfit. I kind of like that little, I want a sailor top, Rob, now. It was a nice blue one with a little collar and a tie. Look what you've got me on.
Be your new conference outfit.
I'll show up at all the conferences with this. A lot. I mean, some people do have a shtick, they have a cowboy hat or they have a certain outfit or,
Oh, all
yeah,
right.
you got to think about your shtick because you haven't had an event yet.
I got a backdrop.
I noticed that and I'm jealous. Like I didn't want to clean my office, so I just threw up the screen with all the mess behind it. But how do you do that backdrop? Is it actual something physical or is it virtual? Okay, it's actual. Cool. I like it. Yeah. Very cool. I feel like you and I are having a conversation and maybe there's an audience and maybe there's not. They've all like, God, I'm giving up on this now. So we'll find out. David's chiming in there.
we do have an audience question, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And it's from Carol, and she asks, Rob, could you talk about what mystery writers have influenced you, or about some of your favorite mysteries?
Oh, Armistead, Maupin, I would say first. So there could be a quarrel like mystery or just more lighthearted fiction, but he started his Tales of the City series. The first one came out 41 years ago. And for those who know, bear with me. For those who don't know, this is actually, I think, pretty interesting. The genesis of that first book, which again became a series of, I think, 9 books. I think that's right. If not, I'm close. Was in the San Francisco Chronicle. So he actually produced those as columns, and then later turned the columns into books. Why that was so inspirational to me is, anybody will tell you, like write what you know, or write what you want to read, or write what motivates you, what's your passion. And I love those books because they feature a gay character, Michael Tolliver, but then also, his best friend, who is a woman, who happens to be straight from the Midwest, Mary Ann Singleton, their landlady, Anna Madrigal, turns out later in books to be revealed as, spoiler alert, a transsexual woman. It's all about friendships, and I love that these people didn't have to necessarily be the same in terms of a demographic profile to become great friends, right? Because it was all about friendship. In the first book, he did drop a really kind of interesting little mystery in the middle of this lighthearted, fun, humorous community. And in many ways, I think it was like the first cozy, that term, of course, didn't exist. But I just loved the vibe of the book. Again, lighthearted, friendship at the core, rompy, right? I mean, there was a lot of adventuring, urban adventuring going on. That I really enjoyed. Agatha Christie, I grew up reading those, and I love the whodunit, where it's finally revealed and all the clues were there. You should have seen it, but it was just well enough hidden that you didn't see it coming. And because they're really like, they're puzzles, right? They're fictional puzzles where you're like trying to piece it together. And those, I'll stop there so I'm not long-winded, but I would say those two are are certainly not the only ones, but those two just really jump to mind as two authors that really influenced me.
How about just ones that you like now? Anything modern that you really like?
Yeah, I mean, she's doing such a different thing. I love Lindsay Fay,
Mhm.
right? Because like her power of description is just off the charts. I just find myself, it's one of those books where you read it and it's like, this is kind of literary fiction, right? Where the words themselves and the way that she sets a scene and describes it is just marvelous. I mean, it's like nothing, it's something I could never do. And I'm so glad that I chose not to try to do that, because I cannot do that. My mind is, I would like to believe my mind is creative and maybe in different ways of like, creating these characters or something, but not in terms of the things that she is able to do in terms of just like word craft, and describing the scenes, and fantastic. I like Ellie Griffith. I think she's, marvelous. Yeah, and then I'll read a lot of outside of mystery. So Alan Hollingsworth, I really like. Greer, Anthony Doerr, who lives in Boise, Idaho. There's a fun fact for you. So a few others.
Thanks, Rob. I've got a question for you now. When you were writing Devil's Chew-Toy, and when you're at work on the as of yet untitled second one, are you thinking about the strictures of a cozy mystery, or are you using those as a springboard, or how is it just sort of what you like?
That's a super interesting question. This came up. I was really flattered to be asked to do a crime reads guest article, and you pitch them ideas, and they and then they choose one, because understandably so, they don't want to do something that they've done before. And so they bid on this kind of celebration of the cozy, which is, as you said early on, it's like the mashup of cozy and LGBTQ. And in that, I found one book that's actually published by Crooked Lane. It's not out yet. And then I profile that as like, oh, here's another cozy that's coming. And it turns out that it's, and we mentioned earlier, Katrina McPherson, and there was this Twitter dialogue going on between the author of that book, myself, and Katrina about like, well, I don't know if we can call that a cozy. I think Rob really meant that to be like a cozy, but just a gay cozy. Because it turns out that this other book has a lot of swearing, and she's kind of a serial killer. So I'm like, but it was an interesting conversation, albeit short, about like, well, could cozy kind of push the boundaries of the traditional cozy, because it's not a cozy, it's a quozy. But I think for it to have any meaning, and the slippery slope argument is, well, then do quosies, start having, graphic sex or gratuitous violence, or, too many F-bombs, and, so it's just like, no, it probably isn't, maybe that is quosy adjacent.
Yeah.
I've got a narrow lane, right? Because it's a gay cozy pretty much. But to try to make that as accessible to as many readers as possible, and not just from like market opportunity, but because I want people to read it. I mean, maybe those sound like two sides of the same coin, but it's like if I don't have to put an F-bomb, or if I don't have to have graphic sex in there, or sex at all, it's like, that's not what I was up to, right? I wanted the fun, lighthearted book with friendship at the core. And I found that, I could hopefully successfully, making it entertaining without having to do that.
Thanks, Rob. Please, if anyone has any questions, type them into the Q&A box. I'll be happy to pose them for you. But that brought up another question that I have, Rob. Is there a favorite scene that you wrote that didn't make it into the final edition of the book, the final copy?
Ooh. I don't think we cut anything, did we?
Oh, we didn't. I thought maybe, something got cut before it came to me. I know I cut a scene out of my first novel and I saved it and I used it in the second novel.
Harvested it.
Yes. Well, it made it easier to revise. If you think I'm not erasing this, I'm just putting it in another file another day,
Yeah.
because it is hard to, maybe because I started out nonfiction, it's very hard to reimagine things initially for me, but I just saved it. And the interesting thing about that is that it was a cake baking scene, one of the roommates of the main character. And then the person that's based on at the time, and in the book, he was 18 and he was from California. The person it's based on, I've recently reconnected with, and he now lives in Germany. He's a graphic designer. And I'm like, how cool if he would come like design some book covers for my publisher. And it's really fun to, I think we're always supposed to deny that the characters in our books are at all based on real people, but a lot of mine they were based on my roommates and me. And I just made up a world around them. And it's so fun to reconnect with people that many years later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do people ever think they're in your book, Rob? That's a good question, I think. Or do they think you're Hayden?
No, I have gotten that from a few friends. It's like, he's based on you, because I'm not like I'm not large. I'm not as small as he is.
Yeah.
But I'm not large. There's certainly one character more than any, and that's Della Rupert, who is the proprietress of Barkingham Palace,
Yeah.
who is based on someone I know very well.
Uh-oh. Do they know it?
No.
Okay.
If I told, which I will never do, if I told certain people who know her, they would go, "Oh my gosh, I totally see that." But no, but we steal from our real life experiences. Yeah. So that's where she came from.
Yes. And I have heard that people in general, they don't recognize themselves because no one really knows what they're like. They might think they're a more laudatory or more attractive character than they actually would be if they were in the book. So
yeah. Well, and I mean, I'll take like the quirky things and then, like dial them up a little bit, and just hopefully not so far that it's like, they're just not believable, or they just become too, goofy or slapsticky.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, Rob, thank you both so much. This has been a delight this evening. The book is Devil's Chew Toy. You can order it at northshire.com. I've put the exact link in the chat as well, and you'll get another email with that information as well. Thank you both so much for joining us, and we'll see you all at another Northshire Presents virtual event soon. Take care.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you.